Yo, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. And if you are new here, strap in right now because today we are going deep into one of the most controversial, most talked about, most misunderstood beefs in Chicago rap history. And the man who was right there in the middle of it all is finally speaking up. Memo600. 600 blocks. King Von's Day 1. Lil Durk's mud brother. This man has been in the trenches, been on the songs, been on the front lines, and for years, everybody has been telling this story wrong.
Man. So like Dirk, how did he feel?
I don't know. I can't tell you how that man feel. Folks just feel like it's him and his team. That's it. No game banging. No none of that. Folks really an artist.
So I'm saying like when niggas was dropping songs, the niggas was like, damn, fool now. The niggas speak on it like, cause Von listened to Duck's song on the thing.
Too. I listened to Young Boy on Still songs. I listened to game, but I never played it.
FBG Duck. King Von. O Block versus FBG. 5-0 Block. Ruga. The hits, the murders, the court cases, the FBI documents. People think they know what happened. Blogs have been running their mouths. YouTubers have been speculating. Fans have been arguing in the comments since 2019. But according to Memo600 himself, nobody has told the real story.
I'm saying these are something that people never asked. Have Von, did Von like Duck, like I'm saying like, cause that used to be going back and forth in the inbox.
Hell no.
Von hated.
That's a dumb question. Yeah.
He hated him.
That's a dumb question, man.
So I'm saying
I ain't gonna sit here like I hate you and it look like I got hatred and I'm hating on y'all.
And today on King Yella's show, this man sat down, looked dead into that camera, and said enough. He is done letting lies breathe. He is done watching people rewrite history. The truth is coming out right now, and trust me, you are not ready for what he is about to expose. Stay locked in. This one goes crazy. Alight, so let us set the scene. Because before we even get into what Memo600 said on that King Yella show interview, we need to go back. Way back. Because this beef did not start overnight. This did not pop off because of a diss track or a Twitter argument or some Instagram comment. No, no, no. This started in the streets of Chicago. This started in the neighborhoods. This started with real history, real blood, real pain. And if you do not understand where these men came from, you will never understand why what Memo600 said hit so different. Chicago. South Side. O Block. 600 Block. These are not just addresses. These are identities. These are families. These are the places that shaped King Von, shaped Memo600, shaped the entire Only the Family movement before it ever became a rap empire. Lil Durk built something real out of nothing, and the men around him, the Memo600s, the Buka 600s, the Duty Los, these were not just features on a song. These were brothers. Mud brothers. Men who grew up together, struggled together, and watched each other's backs when the streets got dark. And then there was FBG. Flyboy Gang. FBG Duck, Carlton Weekly, one of Chicago's most respected voices from the other side. Smart. Charismatic. Fearless. FBG Duck was not just some random op. He was a real figure in that city. And Ruga, his cousin, equally real, equally respected on his side of the city. And for years, these two worlds, O Block and FBG, existed in a tension so thick you could feel it through the music. You could hear it in the bars. You could see it in the way these men moved. Now fans think they know the story. They heard the FBI documents. They read the blogs. They watched the court cases play out. They know 5-0 Block members were convicted for FBG Duck's murder in August 2020. They know documents surfaced saying King Von allegedly put a price on Duck's head, starting at $50,000 and reportedly going up to $100,000. They think they understand the full picture. But here is what Memo600 wants you to understand. What you read is not always what happened. What the blogs reported is not always the full truth. And what the internet decided to believe became a narrative that took on a life of its own, completely disconnected from the reality these men actually lived. That is exactly what Memo600 came to King Yella's show to address. And King Yella, let us be clear, is not just some random interviewer. King Yella has his own history with this entire situation. He has been vocal about King Von, about Lil Durk, about FBG Duck, about all of it. So when these two men sit across from each other and start talking, it is not a regular interview. It is two people who are inside this world, comparing notes, challenging each other, and trying to figure out what the public actually deserves to know. Memo600 starts talking, and almost immediately the energy in that room shifts. Because he is not coming in soft. He is not being diplomatic. He is not doing the politician thing where you say a lot of words and mean nothing. He leans in and he says, "Look, everybody's been talking about this beef like they were there. Like they know what Vaughn thought, what Duck thought, what the real relationship was between these men. And they were not there. I was there. And the story that is being told? It is missing everything that actually matters." Now fans watching that clip, they were shook. Because Memo600 is not the type to just talk. This man has a reputation. He has been through real situations. He collaborated with King Von on music. He was featured alongside Lil Durk and Buka600 on multiple tracks. He was I in those rooms, I in those conversations. When he says the story is wrong, that carries weight in a way that some blog posts simply cannot. So what exactly is being misrepresented? Memo600 starts breaking it down, and the first thing he addresses is this idea that King Von and FBG Duck were just pure enemies from the beginning. That there was never any complexity, never any gray area, just two sides that hated each other from day one. And Memo600 is looking at the camera almost frustrated because he knows how simplified that version of events is. He knows how much it erases. Because here is what people forget. Before the beef escalated to where it went, before the music got dark, before the streets got loud, before everything that happened in 2020, there were conversations. There were moments. There were people on both sides who knew people on both sides. Chicago is a big city, but the rap scene? The rap scene is small. Everybody knows everybody. And that means the lines between op and ally are not always as clean as the internet wants to make them. Memo600 makes it very clear. He is not here to defend anyone's actions. He is not here to rewrite history in a way that protects anybody's legacy. He is here because he watched people who were not present spin a narrative that painted everything in black and white when the reality was so much more complicated than that. And he feels a responsibility, not just to Vaughn's memory, not just to his own reputation, but to the truth. And then King Yella, who has his own complicated feelings about all of this, starts pressing him. Because King Yella is not just going to sit there and nod. He pushes back. He says, "Okay, Memo, but what about the music? What about exposing me? What about when Vaughn got on that track with you and made it very clear where he stood?" Because that 2019 remix, the one where Vaughn and Memo600 traded bars that were very specifically aimed at their rivals, that was not ambiguous. That was a statement. That was Vaughn planting his flag. And Memo600 does not back down from that. He says, yes, that song was what it was. That situation was real. But what people are doing is taking one song, one moment, and using it to explain 5 years of history. And that is where they are getting it wrong. That song was a reaction to specific events at a specific time. It was not the origin of everything. It was not the full picture. And when you use one moment to define an entire war, you miss all the things that happened before it, after it, and in between it that actually explain why things went the way they went. The room gets quiet for a second after he says that. King Yella is nodding slowly. The interviewer is letting it breathe. And Memo600, you can see it in his face, he is not done. He is just getting started. Because the part that really has him fired up, the part that you can tell has been sitting heavy on him for a long time, is not just about the beef itself. It is about what happened after. It is about how people processed FBG Duck's death. How they processed King Von's death. How the internet turned two human beings into symbols and forgot that behind every diss track, every court document, every FBI report, there were real people, real families, real consequences. Because here is where Memo600 really starts to open up. And this is the part that the blogs will never tell you. This is the part that gets lost when people reduce everything to a tweet or a headline or a 30-second clip. The human side. The part where you realize that behind all of this, behind the beef, behind the music, behind the court cases and the FBI documents. There were real men who were navigating something that most people watching from their phones will never fully understand. Memo600 starts talking about what it actually felt like to be inside that world during those years. And he is not being dramatic for the camera. He is not performing. You can hear it in his voice. This is a man who carried something heavy for a long time, and he is finally putting it down in front of everybody. He talks about what it means to grow up in a city where the lines between loyalty and survival are constantly being tested. Where the people you love are also the people who put you in dangerous situations. Where being somebody's brother means something completely different than what it means in a suburb somewhere. And then he says something that stops the entire conversation cold. He says, "People act like Vaughn and Duck were just ops and nothing else. Like that is the beginning and the end of the story. But what they do not understand is that in Chicago, your op is sometimes somebody you grew up around. Somebody who went to the same schools, walked the same blocks, knew the same people. The beef is real, do not get it twisted, but the humanity is also real. And when you strip that away, when you just make it about who killed who and who put money on who, you are not telling the story. You are just feeding people what they want to hear." King Yella is leaning forward now, because this is touching something for him too. King Yella has had his own public moments with Vaughn, with Dirk, with the FBG side, and you can tell that what Memo600 is saying is resonating on a personal level. He jumps in and he says, and that is exactly the problem. Because once somebody dies, everybody becomes an expert. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody acts like they were in the room. And the people who were actually there, the people who actually knew these men, they get drowned out by the noise. Memo600 nods and keeps going. And now he shifts to something that has been circulating in the streets and on the internet for a long time. The question of whether Lil Durk and King Von ever had any real connection to FBG Duck outside of the beef. Whether there were ever conversations. Whether there was ever a moment where things could have gone differently. And this is where Memo600 gets very specific. Very careful with his words. Because he knows that whatever he says next is going to be clipped, shared, debated, and misrepresented the moment this video goes live. He says, "I am going to say this clearly so nobody can twist it. Vaughn and Duck were on opposite sides. That is facts. Dirk and Duck were on opposite sides. That is also facts. But what people keep trying to do is make it like these men were monsters who had zero understanding of each other as human beings. And that is where the story becomes fiction. Because the reality, the real reality, is that in Chicago, even your deepest beef exists alongside a shared history, a shared city, a shared struggle. And pretending that does not exist is not keeping it real. That is actually the fakest thing you can do." Now fans online watching this clip are going absolutely crazy in the comments. Because this is not what they expected. They came for confirmation. They came for Memo600 to say, yeah, Vaughn wanted Duck gone from day one, end of story. But instead they are getting something that challenges them to think deeper. And some people love it. And some people, the ones who have already made up their minds, they are pushing back hard. Saying Memo is being soft. Saying he is protecting people. Saying he is rewriting history. But Memo600 anticipated that. Because he addresses it directly. He says, "No people are going to say I am being soft. I know people are going to say I am protecting somebody's legacy. But let me ask you something. What do you gain from a simplified story? What does it do for Vaughn's family? What does it do for Duck's family? What does it do for the city? Nothing. It gives you something to argue about on the internet, and it gives blogs something to post. That is it. The real story, the full story, is the only thing that actually honors what these men went through." And then he brings up Ruga. And this is where things get even more layered. Because Memo600 and Ruga, FBG Duck's cousin, had their own beef that went back years. Real beef. Street beef. The kind that does not get resolved with a handshake and a photo op. And yet, and this is something that shocked a lot of people when it came out, Memo600 and Ruga eventually squashed it. They came to some kind of understanding. And the internet lost its mind when that happened. People accused Memo of being fake. People accused Ruga of being weak. People could not process the idea that two men who had genuine animosity could choose to move differently. Memo600 looks at King Yella when this comes up and he almost laughs. Not because it is funny, but because he knows exactly what people said and he knows exactly how wrong they were. He says, "When me and Ruga decided to squash what we had, people acted like we committed a crime. Like we owed the internet our beef forever. Like our lives exist for people to consume as entertainment." And that right there, that is the problem. That is exactly what I am talking about when I say nobody tells the real story. Because the real story includes growth. The real story includes moments where men decide that enough is enough. And that does not fit the narrative that gets the most clicks, so it gets ignored or it gets twisted into something negative. King Yella responds and says, "And that is something that Vaughn always understood too. People forget that Vaughn was not just a street figure. He was a thinker. He was observant. He paid attention to things. And the way people have reduced him since his passing to just his beef and his ops, that bothers me too. Because that man had depth that most people never got to see." And Memo600 agrees. Completely. And you can see in that moment that this interview is not just about exposing a story. It is about two men who lost somebody real trying to make sure that person gets remembered correctly. Trying to make sure that the circus of internet speculation does not become the permanent record of who King Vaughn actually was. But then, just when the conversation starts to feel like it is reaching some kind of peace, Memo600 says something that shifts the entire energy of the room again. Something that makes King Yella sit up straight. Something that the comments section was not prepared for. Something about what really happened behind the scenes during that entire period. Information that has never been publicly confirmed, never been fully addressed, and has been sitting in the shadows of this story since the very beginning. Because what Memo600 says next is the kind of thing that makes you pause the video. Rewind it. Watch it again. Because you want to make sure you heard it correctly. You want to make sure that this man actually just said what you think he said. And he did. He absolutely did. And the room, King Yella, the camera crew, everybody present in that space, you can feel the weight of it settle over everything like a blanket. Memo600 leans forward and he says, "There were people around this situation who were more concerned with how it looked than what was actually happening. People who had access. People who had influence. People who could have said something, done something, moved differently, and they chose not to. Not because they did not know, but because knowing and acting are two very different things when your own position is on the line." Now he is not dropping specific names in this moment. He is being deliberate. He is being careful. But anybody who knows this world, anybody who has been paying attention to Chicago rap politics for the last several years, knows exactly the kind of people he is talking about. Because this is not the first time whispers like this have circulated. This is not the first time someone close to the situation has suggested that the full picture of what happened around FBG Duck's death and King Von's death involves more layers than the public has ever been given access to. And King Yella, who has spent years making his own controversial statements about Lil Durk, about O'Block, about the entire OTF structure, King Yella is not letting this slide by without pushing. He says, "So you are telling me that there were people who knew things and stayed quiet. People who prioritized their career, their safety, their image over what was right." And Memo600 looks at him and says, "I am not telling you anything you do not already know. I am just the one saying it out loud." Fans watching that exchange lost their minds. Because this is the energy they came for, but it is landing differently than they expected. Because it is not gossip. It is not clout chasing. This is a man who is embedded in this world, speaking with the quiet authority of someone who watched everything unfold from the inside. And that credibility, that proximity to the actual events, is what makes everything he is saying land so hard. He then pivots to talking about the music. About what the music actually meant during all of this. Because people forget that during the height of this beef, during 2019 and 2020 when everything was escalating, these men were also making some of the most powerful music of their careers. King Von was releasing records that were going platinum. Memo600 was featured on tracks alongside Durk and Von that were charting and connecting with millions of people. And Memo600 makes a point that is so simple, but so devastating when you really sit with it. He says, We were making music about our lives while we were still living those lives. There was no separation. What you heard on those records was happening in real time. And people were streaming it like it was entertainment, while for us it was just Tuesday. That line lands like a punch. Because it reframes everything. It forces you to reckon with the reality that the consumption of drill music, the billions of streams, the viral moments, the meme culture around it, exists in direct tension with the fact that for the people making it, none of it was abstract. None of it was performance. It was documentation. And when FBG Duck was killed in August 2020 in broad daylight in the Gold Coast, one of Chicago's most upscale neighborhoods, and when King Von was killed 3 months later outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta, those were not plot twists in a story. Those were human beings losing their lives. Memo600 gets quiet for a moment after saying this. And King Yella lets him have that moment. Does not fill the silence. Just lets it sit. And in that silence you understand why this interview matters. Because this is grief. Underneath all the street politics and the rap beef and the internet discourse, this is two men who are grieving. Who watched people they knew get killed. Who are still trying to make sense of it years later, while the world has already moved on to the next controversy. And then Memo600 collects himself, and he says something that brings everything full circle. He says, the reason nobody tells the real story is because the real story requires you to hold two things at the same time. It requires you to acknowledge that the beef was real and that the men involved were more than their beef. It requires you to understand that loyalty is complicated and that love is real even in the darkest situations. The internet does not do well with complexity. The internet wants a villain and a victim and a clear ending. But life, real life, does not work like that. And until people are willing to sit with that complexity, they are always going to get the story wrong. King Yella nods and says, and that is exactly why conversations like this matter. Because somebody has to be willing to say the thing that does not get the most likes. Somebody has to be willing to complicate the narrative instead of just feeding the machine. And Memo600 looks directly at the camera, directly at you, and he says, I have been quiet for too long. I watched people build entire platforms off of stories they were never part of. I watched Von's name get attached to narratives that would have made him sick. I watched Duck get reduced to a headline. And I said enough. Not for the views. Not for the clout. But because these were real people, and real people deserve real stories. Even when those stories are uncomfortable. Even when those stories challenge what you think you know. Even when the truth is messier and harder and more human than the version that goes viral. And with that, the room exhales. King Yella sits back. Memo600 leans back. And you realize that what you just watched was not just an interview. It was a reckoning. A man stepping into the light and refusing to let history be written by people who were never there. A man choosing truth over comfort in a world that almost always rewards the opposite. The story of King Von and FBG Duck is not over. The legal battles, the civil lawsuits, the ongoing conversations about what happened and why, all of it is still very much alive. And Memo600 just made sure that his voice, the voice of someone who was actually present, is now officially part of the record. And that right there is why this interview is breaking the internet today. Memo600 came to King Yella's show and did not hold back. He challenged the narrative. He honored the complexity. He spoke for the people who can no longer speak for themselves. And whether you agree with everything he said or not, you cannot deny that this man brought a perspective to this story that nobody else has been willing to bring. So now the question falls to you. Do you think Memo600 is telling the truth? Do you think there are still people out there who know more than they are saying? Do you think the full story of King Von and FBG Duck will ever truly come out? Or will it always be buried under blogs and speculation and internet gossip? The comment section is open, and we want to hear everything you have got. Drop your thoughts below. Tell us what hit different. Tell us what you think Memo600 left out. Tell us who you think needs to sit down next and have this conversation on camera. And if you are new to this channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button right now because we cover the stories that matter. The stories that go deeper than the surface. The stories that the other channels are too scared or too lazy to touch. We do not do clickbait. We do not do half-truths. We bring you the full picture every single time. Like this video if Memo600 had you seeing this whole situation differently. Share it with somebody who thinks they already know the full story, because clearly, nobody does. And stay locked in because we have got more coming that is going to make today's video look like the warm-up. We out. Stay safe. Stay informed. And never let the internet write the history of real people.